Okay, so good afternoon. This is Steve Mazikane from the Steve Mazikane podcast. Welcome back. Thank you so much for a lot of emails and texts from yesterday's podcast. So we're glad we can have that conversation. We're glad to have Laura on and talk about the animal shelter. We'll talk a little bit more about that today as well. Just make sure that everybody can hear us. I'll pull this up. Hold on one second. Okay. Looks like we're live and it looks like we're fine. So a couple of things to talk about today. We're going to focus on development in a little bit, but first, we just got an email from the East Shore Health Department and talking primarily about flu shots. Now, if you didn't hear, the Connecticut Mirror just reported that there's a senior facility in upstate, further up the state, that has almost half their residents now have COVID. The percentage of positives are increasing in the state, so this could be a serious problem. And so the East Shore Health Department just put this out. I'll read this. For the first time in this country, we will have two viruses circulating at the same time, COVID-19 and influenza. Every year, the flu sends thousands of Connecticut residents to the hospital, and for some, it can be fatal. In order to ease the strain on our healthcare system, which is already overburdened by COVID, experts say it's a poorly written press release, but experts say how these two will interact in the body is an unknown. So the best thing to use, the current effective tool we have to avoid them, and that's the flu vaccine. So in Branford, the Branford Community House on Monday from 1 to 5 will have a flu clinic. There's one scheduled for Old Stone Church on the 15th in East Haven, and then on the 26th of October, the 16th of November, and the 30th of November, there are more at East Shore Health Department. So we have those. We will post these. It could be vital that we get those. They're free for those who have insurance. I'm not sure what happens if you don't have insurance. But right now, that's the information we have. We will post that on our Facebook page in Branford 7 later on. We posted earlier today. It was sort of an accident because we were supposed to hold off until 4 o'clock. But the animal shelter right now is launching their fundraising campaign. The video will be posted on their Facebook page. We will share that as well. Yesterday, we got a chance to talk to Laura about that project. Part of what's being launched today is Stony Creek Brewery is doing a special beer run called Rescue Brew, and each one contains there's a rescue animal on each can. There's kind of a story of each animal, and they are a 4-pack is $15, which isn't that crazy for beer, and a case of 24 16-ounce cans is $90. You can order them. We sent the information up earlier today, and you can get that. Ray, they already have 25 cases this morning. That's what the animal shelters raised. That's true. That's impressive. Now they've raised about 3/4 of what they're trying to raise from large donations. When you're raising money, you start with the people who are going to give 100 grand or 50 grand or what have you. They've raised quite a bit already, and now it becomes a community thing. And certainly they want to get over that $1 million threshold. That offsets taxes anyway. It basically doubles the size of the animal shelter, and I think getting the word out yesterday has helped. I'm sure the Register is covering it, and some news organizations and TV stations will cover this as well. Animals, for most media, is a topic media loves to talk about. So that's that. I guess I'll try the beer at some point. I'm not a big beer drinker, but we'll try it. All right, so let's talk about some primarily Branford issues. I tried to let you know the day before that we're going to be talking about Branford because I know we do have people from not in Branford watching, and we're trying to grow that. And so we will be talking more about state issues and presidential issues next week. But I got a chance to watch. I did not watch it live. The Board of Ed meeting from from Tuesday night. And the Board of Ed meeting was a special meeting called by the Board of Ed, by John Prinz, to rescind the vote to make him chairman and the vote to make the vice chair, and to basically start over. And, the result was Prinz was reelected. That's fine. Prinz said in one media report he called it again because there was confusion. No, there were some parents who had started a petition and a complaint and filed a complaint with the state that Prinz, whatever happened. I don't see anything significant significantly wrong with Prince did. I don't see any real problem. They had a vacancy. They voted on a replacement. He made clear that if they wanted to change it in the next meeting, they could have. So I don't know that it was needed to call a special meeting, but in any event, it's done, and that's all there is to it. That said, we are, yeah, okay, so just responding to Bray, I am. We talked about that the other day. Their rollout is today. It's just a video, though, and I will share that video on Branford 7 and our other sites later on tonight. But here's the issue again when it comes to PRINS, when it comes to the Board of Ed, and when it comes to parents. We first have to understand that there's a difference between parents who just care about their kids and are concerned about their education. Most of them. There are parents who are vocal, who show up at meetings and speak. It's a very small group, but they're vocal. And then there are parents who are activists. And they're on social media with an agenda, and they want to rally the troops, and they want to. And so some of those activists do not like John Prince. And I'm seeing their social media pages, and they're trying to get petitions against him, and it's just more of the same for the last 20 years or whatever. First of all, we may have problems in our school system. There may be some issues in our school system. But we have a very good school system. You know, this nonsense that we're just going to keep bashing our teachers, keep bashing our officials. And then they say, well, it's not the teachers, it's just the officials. Well, they're all part of it. Many, many students have gone through Branford school system and done well. So this nonstop, constant bashing of officials, whether you like them or not, is disingenuous, and it's clearly meant as a, to stroke your own ego or as some sort of activism. Now, clearly there are people there who have long-term agendas, personal agendas against some members. And last night was an example of more of that, not last night, the night before, I'm sorry, but also what John Prince should be doing differently. I don't have any problem with him being the chair of the Board of Ed. Like I said before, I've mentioned this on this podcast. He's kind of a kumbaya guy. He's like, all our kids are great and our school system's wonderful. And you wonder if that's really the voice you need right now. You'd like somebody a little more, listen, let's face our problems head on. Let's look at them. The other issue with John is he finds the longest possible way to say everything. And we saw that again in this meeting. But the real issue I saw was there is a parent, and I don't think he has any students in the school system, who was an activist parent, right? He has a long-term vendetta against the previous Board of Ed chair. He has a long-term vendetta against Hamlet Hernandez, and he got up and spoke and basically trashed the members. But as he was speaking, John Prince, and I think in an attempt to have some level of control, an attempt to put his foot down, kind of did this, all right, you have a minute left, and you have 30 seconds left, and you have a few seconds left, and this countdown. And then if he said anything that he felt wasn't on topic, well, you can't speak about that, you can't speak about that. So before we even get to any policies of the Board of Ed, any goals of the Board of Ed, if we have any advice to give to John Prince, and it's advice in the best possible way, we want you to do well. We want you to be successful. We want whatever issues exist to be addressed. We want us to be open-minded in addressing those issues. We understand there's going to be activist parents. Nobody's stupid. When people come up and start calling you names and start yelling, and when there's people on social media saying this is awful and terrible, those are activist parents. Most parents, most residents of town have the ability to discount that group. We know it's crazy. And we have dealt with that on the other side of Branford for years. We've had a person come to meeting after meeting after meeting, and most people are like, okay, put signs up all over town and take over meetings, what have you. But on the RTM side, with the exception of a few people, and on most of the town side, people have learned to just kind of give him his time and move on with your life. And if you take nothing else from this discussion for John and for this chair, is when you have a parent speaking and they have 3 minutes, give them their 3 minutes. Just give it to them. If they call you names for 3 minutes, all right, they called you names for 3 minutes. If they say something that's not true for 3 minutes, all right, they said something that's not true for 3 minutes. Don't go back and forth, because it only makes it worse. And last night, I know there's a desire to keep control. I know there's a desire to have some level of accuracy, but you're not going to help yourself. We have seen with Wayne Cook on the Branford side, with Uncle Ross, what should have been a 2-minute speech became a 20-minute shouting match because Ung's trying to cut him off, and Wayne loves that. He wants the back and forth. Those activists, sometimes they got nothing else going on in life. They're there for that back and forth. They're at the meeting to start crap. And they've accomplished what they wanted to if they can get you to respond. And then they'll play the victim. Oh my God, he wouldn't let me talk. He interrupted me. So don't do it. There's going to be parents on social media saying, let's get a petition, or this is a terrible decision. No, it was a legal decision. It was chosen the right way. The board voted. You're in. You're never going to make 100% of the people happy. So don't go crazy trying. So if there's anything, my advice to John Prinz, if you're listening, and clearly in the best possible way, I want you to be successful, is one, find fewer words to say the same thing. All right? With all due respect, you started your speech the other night with, I went to Board of Ed meetings 21 years ago before I was a member, and I was at more Board of Ed meetings than the members were. No one gives a shit. Like, who cares? That's nice, but no one cares. Make your point, and let's move on. Let's not have 3.5-hour Board of Ed meetings for no apparent reason. Right? Your life history, I'm sure it's impressive, but it's not something we want to hear. So find fewer words to say the same thing. And two, when you give time to the public, when they have their 3 minutes, give them their 3 minutes. You don't have to answer questions if you don't want to. There is no one on the planet that says you have to answer questions. There are activist parents that will say, we demand back and forth, we demand answers. Listen to COVID. 95% of town knows it's COVID. There's a lot going on. There's not going to be answers. And we all know from experience that the kids figure it out. Kids come in, they listen to the teachers, they know it's a tough time, they wear their masks, they social distance the best they can, and they're fine. There's going to be a couple activist parents. You are not helping yourself by engaging with them during their comment portion, during their 3 minutes. So you have business, handle your business, give the public their time to be heard. If it's something that's easy to answer, answer it. The rule of we can't respond, that's nonsense. That's not an actual rule. You're elected. Nobody, when they were running for office, said, listen, I want to be on the Board of Ed, but I can't wait to not answer your questions when I'm on there. Like, that makes no sense. CABE and the lawyers will say you shouldn't say anything, but that's bullshit. If you're an elected official and somebody asks you a question, you don't have to answer it, but don't be afraid to answer it because some idiot lawyer told you shouldn't. Lawyers always tell you not to. You're elected. You respond to those people. But you're responding to, and I'll give you an example. So we have had some people come on this podcast and try to bait me, right? So they'll start a fight or whatever issue they want to engage in. This doesn't happen much now, but it's happened in the past. The audience is not that person. The audience is everyone else. And they're watching not just what that person says, but they're watching how I respond to it too. I tend not to get too upset. I tend to look at things, why is this person saying this as opposed to what they're saying? But I've gotten worked up before. But my audience isn't that person. So remember, when you're responding to people who are trying to provoke you, they're trying to get you upset, the people you are actually representing is everybody else. And the rest of us are reasonable. We know COVID's happening. We know there's turnover on the board. We know there's issues going on. Don't engage in those 3 minutes. If they're reasonable and there's questions that you can answer, answer them. But when they have that time, don't do it. And it just, you could see in that meeting, there was already a tension. You could see Prinz was worked up. You could see he wanted to control it. I understand that. But give the people their time. Back away. And so that's just my initial reaction to watching that first meeting of the new Board of Education. And Shannon was good, and she couldn't stay on there. We understood that. Prinz wants to be chairman badly. Okay, you have a chance. That'll likely last until the next election. There will be Board of Ed members, and probably quite a few of them, on the election next November. If I don't know if the Democrats run somebody against Jamie anyway, but the Board of Ed very likely may be the primary discussion come November because Jamie will be a huge favorite. Jamie Cosgrove will be a significant favorite on the town side. So Education could be much of that discussion come that time. But don't go too crazy with activist parents. The other parents know who they are, and it's not worth engaging when somebody's clearly there debating. So, John, I wish you luck. I hope you do well, and I think the entire school system is depending on you doing well, being reasonable, and address issues head on. All right, so let's go on to development in Indian Neck. And it's important, as we talk about so often, this need to get past conjecture, get past opinion, get past ideas of people, and instead get to facts. What are the facts? And planning and zoning is an interesting place for that, because we have watched, we'll give you an example of the Costco application. We watched the facts presented, and then a completely alternative set of so-called facts based on nothing. You remember on WTNH, after the planning and zoning meeting had started, they interviewed some people who were against it. And she goes, she lives on Leeds Island Road. Now Costco was going to go up by 56, really not impact Leeds Island Road in any way, shape, or form. And she said on camera, it's going to take me 10 minutes to get out of my driveway. And the whole world just said, oh my God, like Jesus Christ. And if you saw the websites for the Branford Citizens for Responsible Development, this group that was leading it, and you saw some of the claims from the Democrats who were really behind this, they were absurd. They were a massive pile of crap. And even so Costco came forward and they bought a traffic study expert. The town hires a traffic study expert, paid for with Costco money, but the town selected them to review it. And the opponents also got a traffic expert. And so you had the real expert get up and he said his information, and then you had the town's expert look over that information, say it was fine. And then the opponent's expert gets up and gave no information. It was just, well, this might not be right here, this might not be right here, this might not. It was just trying to poke holes in the other two experts. Because when you're against something, sometimes you think to yourself, I have to say anything and everything I could possibly say to get my way. But you're no longer basing it on facts. You're no longer basing it on evidence. It's okay to be against a project. We have two projects there. One is across from the Stony Creek Brewery. It's about 30 units. It was approved for a hotel. Hotel doesn't make financial sense. They want to move it to residences. We have the Meritoli project, which I believe is about 160 units. Somebody can correct me. 160 units in a space that was previously approved for about half of that, right on the water. They're also creating a now public walkway along the water, public picnic area, and a couple shops. Not a lot. There's 4 buildings in total, and only one of the buildings will have shops on the bottom because it's in a flood zone. You designed to a flood zone. But, we have opponents on Facebook posting what they're calling fact sheets, and there's just no facts. The application comes in. We have, 147 units. The application comes in. Traffic studies are done. Scientists, engineers put their information out there, and we base our decisions on that. Yelling and saying, well, this can't be true because common sense tells us it's not true. That's not a scientific. That's like Trump talking about, pumping something into your veins to kill COVID. Like, that's just, there's nothing scientific about that. We have doctors, we have people who know what they're talking about in medical facilities, medical community, who are giving us COVID advice, and we base our decisions on that advice. The same applies to planning and zoning. When the senior center was built, the community house was built, there were people who were against it, political, they were all Democrats, and they would come up and say, oh, it's in a flood zone, you can't do it. No, engineering and science has told us how to build in a flood zone. Flood zones doesn't suddenly become zero worth property. We build in flood zones. We just build to a different standard. We have hurricanes all over Florida, but a ton of building. Why? Because we build to a better standard. Science tells us how to do those things. So if we're posting information that is clearly just because you don't want the project, you could not want a project. But you can't put out things saying it's true when it's not. You can't say your opinion is based on fact. It's okay to think red is your favorite color. You don't need any facts to support that. But if you're making a statement on social media that is meant to convince other people of something, you cannot just say it's a fact when it clearly isn't a fact. Listen, we have entire religions. We have L. Ron Hubbard wrote a series of science fiction books, and somebody decided it was fact, and that became Scientology. We have books that talk about magic underwear, and somebody decided that was fact, and it became Mormons. We have somebody who decided they were talking snakes, and a man walked on water, and somebody decided that should be Christianity. Whatever. Doesn't make any of them true. And if you're saying, well, common sense tells us these numbers aren't true, it's common sense, your personal view versus science and engineering and reality. And we make decisions based on reality. So what will happen with this project? I don't expect the Stony Creek Brewery project, those 30 units, to pass. Partially because DEP wrote a letter that was absolutely damning. Don't want to get vehicles there. I think the letter kind of took some things out of context. The commission could go the other way. We have to remember they're already approved for basically the same building as a hotel. But a letter like that from Department of Energy and Environmental Protection from the state is pretty damning. And it may put the town in a rough spot if they approve it and there's issues or what have you down the road. So that's going to be a very interesting discussion. On top of that, the Meritoli project looks like it's going towards an approval. It makes sense. Any project, one of the key things we were trying to do as a town, about 2 years ago, we started what's called a transit-oriented district study, which is how do we best use the properties around the train station? And there was money given by the state to start looking into that. And this was happening all over the state. They were putting money there. Lamont actually had a full-time employee, or Malloy, I forgot who it was at the time, an employee whose goal was to create and encourage development near train stations. And there's a reason for that. We want less traffic in town. If people who are commuting to work can walk to their train station, there's less traffic in all the roads around town that lead to the train station. That makes sense. If you can create a bustling area, whether it be residences, commercial properties, restaurants, all that stuff within walking distance, you create tourism in that area. And the belief that this train station area will be negatively impacting all the way down Indian Neck Avenue or Amana East just doesn't make any sense. That's not where the main traffic would be anyway. So while there be complaints, the facts do not support the complaints that we're seeing. That project, you're going to have a major area that we, the public, can go to, even if you don't live there, on the water. You can walk down there, shop some down there, picnic down there, enjoy the waterfront. It'll connect over to where you can rent kayaks over by Nellie's now. And that's ideal. That's something that we want long term. We want development that takes advantage of the water, allows the public to use the waterfront, and takes advantage of our train station and the investments the state has made into that train station. The other project's going to be a different story. Also tonight, we will start hearing the Days Inn project. There is a proposal to have rental units where Days Inn was. That looks like to me a major improvement. Robert Smith, the same guy who was approved for we'll talk about that in a second, Kathy. Robert Smith, the same guy who did Atlantic Wharf. He's approved to take down Days Inn and Key Bank. Key Bank's already gone, and that will be the front building will be a mixed use facility. So there'll be retail on the front on the first floor, and then apartments above, and the back will be higher end apartments. Anything that makes the Days Inn a better looking project, a better looking area, I'm all for. So that should be positive as well. What we want are higher end rentals. We want professionals to come to Branford. We want the transportation. You could be on either 95 or the train station. That will help tax revenue. That will help get the people we want in town. It is not a lot of people with kids. It is not a massive burden on the school system. That's not what these apartments are. If you know what Robert Smith builds, these are not apartments where you're going to have a lot of kids. Just not going to happen. The same thing with the Meritoli projects. Based on the price of these units, you're not going to be a ton of kids. You may have families getting away from New York City for the week. You may have people wanting to relocate out of New York City, obviously, right now. But you're going to have a lot of professional people, either retirees or young professionals in these facilities. The idea that it's going to burden the school system isn't true. Kathy just commented, they're trying to remove local zoning within a half mile of train stations in regards to affordable housing. Here's the deal with affordable housing. All of the state, in order for that to happen, you have to pass something legislatively. The state reps who want that and the state senators who want that are from the cities, New Haven, Danbury, Hartford, Bridgeport, whatever. They're not going anywhere. They're Democrats, and they're going to keep their seats. Democrats always win in those cities. But you're never going to get the votes from either Republicans or Democrats in the other towns. If Robin Comey voted for something like that, she'd be out of office in 5 minutes. Sean Scanlon would not vote for something like that. And so likely these things will never get raised. Somebody will write some version of it that may go to committee. But if it ever got past committee, it would do it as a study, as a commission to look into blah, blah, blah. We do this all the time. Actually changing that law to force this would be political suicide for many elected officials in Branford and Guilford and Madison and all that. Even the liberals who are for affordable housing, a lot of it's not in our town. We don't want it there. Secondly, that's some of the most valuable property. In Branford, our train station is relatively close to the water. So why would you take some of your greatest potential tax base and say, listen, let's use this for affordable housing? That doesn't make any sense because they don't pay any taxes. So it would make no sense for that to happen, especially in Branford, maybe in some other areas, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. There's going to be proposals. People will put it out there. It'll be discussed. I don't see that happening and going too far once you put the suburb voters in there. Justin, back in 1930s when my grandmother was living in Hobson Ave, she told me there used to be a brothel in Indian Neck. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Where was it? I'd love to know, like whereabouts. Kathy, I'll click your link that you sent later. Unfortunately, I'm showing this, but if you want to see that, that's the link from Senate Dems. I'm going to take that down, but that's up there now. So if you want to see it, you're welcome to take a look at whatever she looked. I'm not going to click on it now, but I'll take a look later. But in any event, tonight are those hearings. My expectation, we may not have a vote tonight. I think one public hearing closed, one public hearing is continuing. I'm guessing you're going to have some opposition to the Meritoli project. Last time no one spoke. Clearly some people are going to speak this time. But you have to come with evidence. Otherwise, just say, I don't want it. It's okay. It's okay to say it's old, I don't want this thing. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with having an opinion. But you can't present that opinion as fact-based or science-based or engineering-based without having some facts. And just because you wrote a piece of paper that said this is a fact sheet doesn't mean you actually have facts. Okay, so that's it for this week. We'll update you. I did say, I do get about 4 or 5 emails a week on stocks. I don't trade a ton, but I did buy DraftKings yesterday at about 56 and change, and I sold it today when it hit 62. I got kind of lucky on that. I didn't expect it to go that fast. And I added to CVS. I also bought a couple shares of Norwegian Cruise Lines. So if you want to watch how much money I lose, or I'm not telling you how many stocks I buy, but those are the stocks. If you want to see what I likely lose, you're welcome to watch along, and I'll update you on the podcast. We will be back on Monday. This has been a great week. Our traffic, I wasn't on Monday, but our traffic has been great, and the conversations have been great. And we will be back on Monday. Email if there's any questions. Please share this. Let people know. We're trying to get more viewers, especially in other towns. And we look forward to another conversation then. Guys, thanks a lot for the support. I will see you on Monday.